And Brad, I have to brag on Jennifer. She pulled in more people than anyone. I mean, like way more than anyone. So I had to go buy more seats on Zoom for her.
That's awesome. And
Right?
Jennifer, you're based in Kansas City as well, right?
Yeah, Jennifer, you're in Kansas City, yeah?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, it froze up as soon as you said we're hitting record.
Of course it did.
Of course it did.
Right. So I've got my Chiefs back there.
Nice. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm not a Kansas City native, but I've adopted the Chiefs as my fan.
I saw someone might have been a ticket taker back maybe in the 80s in San Diego or something like that.
Don't give away all my good stories, Brad. That's what the people signed up for. Well,
Remember, y'all put your contact in the chat if you want anybody to be able to reach out and say hi to you.
There's someone else, by the way, on this call that was a ticket taker at a place called The Hangar in Warrensburg, Missouri. There she goes.
Maryville.
Marie. Oh, okay.
Yes. The first dinner theater, 1 site, 5 screen, glorious little place.
Wow, you were ahead of your time.
Yeah.
And I think they actually parked airplanes there too. At least they did before, or something like that.
Nice.
Hi, Alice. Alice is in from Italy. Hi. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Heather. It's a long time. Hi, how are you?
Y'all, Alice is in from Italy.
Nice.
Yes.
And she always has great questions. So this is going to be hard to choose who to ask. Jennifer. You're coming in. Hi, Tess. Jay Lingfellow, you got a red background. What does that mean? And here comes Sammy, and oh my goodness, look at all these faces that I don't know. Hi, Sammy.
Good morning.
Sammy, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Jennifer, she got need to let me have it. What does need to let you have what, Fred? What did he say? Share the screen access. Oh, oops. I gotta help share. That might help. Share multiple people. Okay. Hi, Pamela.
Hello.
Jennifer. Hi, Jim Cook. So Jennifer, Jim Cook has been our token gentleman. Hi, Lisa. Look at this. Hi, Hank. Look, more AMC people.
I know. Again, you all are subjected to me all of the time. I don't know why in the world you would show up to optionally listen to me. Funny people.
Estimate.
But I love them so.
Okay, we'll wait just another minute or two and then we'll run the wee little sizzle.
Okay. Sounds good.
Look at this. Oh my gosh. Oh. This excites the pants off me. Angela, what a cool name.
So am I the only one that's had Taylor Swift songs running through their head for like 3 weeks nonstop? I'm like, we need some hype music here.
No, but my what's it called? Echo, no, my Google thingy, it plays her all the time. It's like, okay.
Well, I ended up seeing her concert maybe 3 times. That was not my intention, but it's just kind of how it turned out. So like every time I started to wean myself off to it, then I was like, I'm back.
Yeah.
What happens when you can't say no to your 12-year-old niece? So I'm like, yes, of course I'll see it for the third time with you.
So now by the way, how did that little ordeal come? Her people went to AMC, decided just to make that call. I mean, that was kind of
big deal. Yeah. Big deal. Yeah. And then Beyonce followed. So we're looking forward to Beyonce entering theaters in December.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
Okay, Fred, go ahead and roll our little wee sizzle. All right. Speaking up for what matters. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited, y'all. Look at all the cool people that are coming. Listen to Jennifer Douglas, Senior VP of U.S. Operations from AMC Theaters. Woohoo!
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
I think it doesn't need to.
Make sure we do a one big hi. We're going to announce our awesome sponsor of today, Velocity Media. Which Velocity Media specialist is going to be our little chit chat person to start?
I think Brad gets the honors.
Brad gets the honors. Fabulous. So Fred, can you go ahead and put his
All right.
make sure people.
Hey guys, well, thank you, Heather, Jennifer. Look forward to hearing your story. We really appreciate this opportunity to sponsor today's event. You may or may not know of Velocity. We sort of have been behind the scenes for a long time, but through some recent acquisitions, we're starting to move from what was behind stage to in front of the screen, if you will. You might recognize some of the folks on the screen, like Joe, John, myself, Marie's on this call. We've been in the space for 20 plus years, and we have been actively involved in doing things like providing digital signage services, digital media. Could you move to the next screen, please?
Fred, next screen. Here we go.
Yeah, so there's some examples. We do digital signage, we do menu boards, we do box office, we do wayfinding. We also have a media network in 300 plus locations. And we also have broadband lines in almost 1,000 locations. We're currently right now helping DC with some locations that are challenged to deliver the film DCPs through satellite. Next slide, please. And so these are another picture of some of the stuff that we do. We also have some really customized solutions out there where we have story walls and video walls. We currently are working with all 3 of the top 3 exhibitors, 9 of the top 10 exhibitors. So we do appreciate you listening to our little story here at the beginning, but really the star for today is Jennifer. And I sort of stole her thunder earlier, but I think she shared on her picture or the invite a picture from way back when she was a ticket taker. And the reason why I bring this up is like I've been in the industry 22 years, and my wife keeps asking me why don't you go do something else? And it's because of the people and the stories. And I really look forward to hearing your story, Jennifer. So thank you guys for the opportunity to sponsor.
Yay.
Yes. Well, thank you. Your the video wall looked amazing for the Taylor Swift premiere. So I was out at the Grove.
Oh yeah.
When we did that. That was awesome. So we've
acquired no pressure there at all.
And I have a shameless plug.
Brad.
The shameless plug that we're working with Velocity too. So, they know how to lean into a great manufacturer partner as well. So there you have it. Okay, y'all. So we're going to let you in on a little personal and professional journey of Jennifer Douglas. And usually when we do these interviews, we like to find out a little bit about where they grew up and where they went to school, because it helps us understand why they work the way they do as adults. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Southern California. I was born in Costa Mesa and lived there until I was probably about 10 years old. We moved to San Diego right around the time I was in 3rd grade, and grew up in San Diego. When people say, well, San Diego, they think La Jolla and Torrey Pines, and that's not where I grew up. I grew up inland in what we call East County. Some people say that with derision in their voice, but a proud East County girl. The next high school over from mine had a Future Farmers of America and also a rodeo that was attached to the high school. So again, more of a blue collar upbringing in terms of where I grew up. But San Diego is obviously a great place to live. It's a great melting pot. There's a lot of military, but just a very diverse place to grow up, which I really appreciated. So went to school in San Diego. I got my degree in education from San Diego State University, which up until the last year, our biggest claim to fame was that we were like one of the 10 best party schools in the nation, but we actually had a good basketball team this past year. So we're pretty excited during March Madness for that. Got my degree, like I said, in education. I come from a family of school teachers. And so graduated from SDSU in 1994, did my student teaching in 1995. And so that's where I grew up. So what you need to know about me is I'm really just a beach girl at heart. Like if there's any chance for me to wear flip-flops, I'm going to wear flip-flops. The sunshine is what makes me happy. And the more sunshine I have in my day, the happier I am. So we're having this amazing weather in Kansas City. Like it was so terrible on Halloween. It was literally like 22 degrees outside and all the poor little trick-or-treaters were just freezing. And then like the last 3 days, it's been 75 degrees. So like, this is like a Christmas miracle to me. I was like, I hate winter. It's my least favorite time in Kansas City.
Jennifer, I think that this education background that you have, I think that's really what has given you some ability to do your job the way you do is you look at things from that perspective. And I think that is what is one of your shining attributes, I guess. Let's talk a little bit about your pastimes and your hobbies. What do you like to do when you are not working?
Well, what's interesting, or I think it's interesting, is that I've ended up in a job that is really designed for extroverts. And, as the head of US operations, like I'm traveling a lot, I'm interacting with theater teams, I'm leading different teams, and I am really an introvert at heart. So I went through some, 360 kind of coaching stuff a couple of years ago. And so it was interesting because it helped me understand some things about myself that I should have intuited, but I couldn't really articulate. But because I am such an introvert at heart, because I'm stubborn and I want to do well at my job, I have to be on and I genuinely enjoy people. Like I love meeting people. I love seeing our theater teams in their theaters. I love interacting. I think we make the best decisions when we have groups of people. So I'm, very collaborative in terms of my style, but it takes a lot out of me. And so when I get home, like I literally don't want to talk to anybody. I'm the person who's going through the self-checkout. I'm the one who's like avoiding people at all costs in my personal life, anything I can do to automate it. So most of my hobbies, not surprisingly, are more introverted ones. I'm an avid reader. I love music. My dad was always a huge record fan. Like he had this vinyl collection from when he lived in like the Philippines when he was in high school. My grandfather was in the military. And so growing up, our tradition was every Saturday night we had taco night at my house, and then my dad would play DJ. And so like I grew up listening to like Fleetwood Mac and all these different, very diverse, the Eagles and Stevie Nicks and Emmylou Harris and just all of these different genres of music. And so I love listening to music. So concerts are fun. I don't have to talk to anybody. I can just sing along. So that works out well for me. I love to travel because like I am a beach girl and I live in a place with no beaches, which is making me very sad. But I've been living here since 2002. So I know when I need to get out and get some more sunshine, and that usually happens. I save my theater visits for all of our warm locations for like January, February, and March. If you're in Massachusetts, you're not going to see me until the snow melts.
So as you do that Burbank refresh, you have to say, listen, I need to go there. I got to go to California. It's, I'm operations. Y'all make sure.
I'm like, gosh, has anybody checked on that theater we have in Naples or Destin lately?
I hear you. So, all right. So, Jennifer, do you read books by chance?
I do. Like I said, I like to read, and I think because I have to use my brain so much in my work, I really like kind of things that are a little more mindless. So I have both my work reading list, and then I have like my personal reading list. And I recently discovered Audible, which I'm really kind of a paper book person. Like I'm very old fashioned in that regard. Although I do have a Kindle because, when you're traveling, you can't lug 17 books along with you. But I discovered Audible, and that's kind of fun to listen to authors kind of read their own books. So on the personal side, if you haven't listened to Dave Grohl, he wrote a book called The Storyteller. And he's had an amazing life and such an interesting story, and just so passionate about music, and just kind of listening to, his story. That was amazing. I also, this last week or two, I was listening to the Britney Spears book, and that's just kind of heartbreaking as a woman. You can have your views about Britney and the state of her mental health and all the rest of those things, but like the things that I think aren't up for debate is that there was clearly a double standard for, male pop stars versus female pop stars at the time when she came out. There was definitely a difference in the dynamic of power, and we'll get to it, but mental health is something I feel really passionately about, and I just think she did not have people who are looking out for her best interests, and it was really kind of a very sad story, which is, I think, a good lesson, because a lot of times you look at people's lives from the outside and you think, oh, they have this perfect life, but everybody's got something going on. And, obviously when she shaved her head, we all knew something was going on. But before that, people just thought her life was perfect. So that was interesting to me. On the work side of things, I try and do a balance, like one mindless book and, that's just for me to listen to and enjoy, and then one that I can get. So a couple books that I've read recently, and we have a great book club. Shout out to Nick Phillip, who is our director of learning development for our TSC. And so we had a book club. So that's been a lot of fun. Gives you a chance to interact with other people. But The Happiness Advantage, we had Sean Aker, who came to one of our general managers meetings a couple years ago. And so if you haven't read The Happiness Advantage, it's fascinating. I think, the whole idea that you can kind of reprogram your brain to kind of look for the positive is something that really resonated with me. The other one I loved was Upstream by Dan Heath. And so if you haven't heard of it, like, the short version is that it opens with these two men that are fishing, and all of a sudden they have everybody, or they're looking at the river, and all of a sudden kids are like in the river and they're like screaming and for help or whatever. And so the one guy jumps in to save the kids, and the other guy takes off and starts running. He's like, hey, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to go find out who's throwing the kids in the water. So, like, the whole notion that, when you're analyzing problems, like, a lot of times we deal with the here and now, like we want to rescue the kid that's right in front of us. But the idea of where did the problem start? How do we address that? So I thought that was fascinating. And then
I feel like our healthcare needs to address that, Jennifer.
Yeah. And there's a lot of healthcare examples in there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So, and then I would say the other one is called Grit, and it's by Angela Duckworth.
Yeah.
And so that one is, grit resonates with me. I think I have some grit. I'm not always the smartest person in the room, but I work super hard, and I will stick to it because I'm stubborn. So
I'm with you. I think you and I align there. I'll outwork you.
Yep.
So I'd like to know, since you've got such a position at work, you've been there a long time, how do you handle stressful situations?
I go to sleep, which is not really a great, I don't recommend that. That's not a great strategy. But honestly, I would say that that's kind of when I'm overwhelmed, like, I just want to curl up and take a nap. But it's also possible I'm just getting old, and maybe that's a part of that as well. So I've learned that I probably need to do some other things. So I try and exercise. I try and do food prep. I know that sounds silly, but there are different points in my career where I had like a role within AMC where, like, I could leave the office and I would go to lunch. And as I've gotten older, it seems like there's a lot of lunch meetings and a lot of things that take up my time. So, like, just being able to, like, there's something very soothing to me on a Sunday night to sit down and kind of prep my lunches for the week. And then it makes me less stressed out to know that at least I'll have one good, healthy meal every single day. So that brings me, helps with my stress. Like I said, on the weekends, I like to do my laundry, I like to cuddle my cat. I kind of focus on what can I control, because there's so much in my life that's sort of outside of my control. I don't know what I'm going to walk into every day when I go to work. But I do, again, kind of subscribe to that notion that, if you look for the positive, you often find the positive. So I try and remember that when I get stressed out about things, because, sometimes our default is like, God, everybody around me is an idiot. And it's like, no, they're not. We're all just doing the best we can. So I find it's easier to be in that mindset of, like, assuming positive intent, assuming that we're trying to all, get in the same boat and row in the same direction. If I am well fed, if I sleep well, and if I can cuddle my cat for 5 minutes a day. So that's kind of my stress.
I have a thing, I call it change the channel. And I pretend that I have an invisible channel changer. So if something comes at me that is negative, I just change the channel. I don't give it any home in my real estate.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. I mean, I think as women, like, that negative self-talk, sometimes contributes to our stress. And a lot of times the more stress we get, it kind of can be kind of a perpetual cycle of, you're stressed out. And so then you're kind of blaming yourself for not being organized enough, or not, getting ahead of things, or not doing that. And then it just makes you feel worse and worse. And so you got to figure out how to change the channel. I like that.
Now, I didn't ask you this in the pre-interview, but do you have a ride or die person?
Sadie.
Oh,
No.
hang on, we got to mute Ann.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Right. I said, do you have a ride or die person?
Oh yeah, I got a best friend. Her name is Mary Kay Shibley, and we've been best friends since we were in 9th grade. She moved from Michigan halfway through our freshman year, and they sat us alphabetically by first name, so Jennifer and Mary Kay. And so she has been my ride or die, and she has been there through some of the greatest moments of my life, and has also been there through some of the worst moments of my life. And so I used to laugh because when I worked in San Diego, I was a general manager in the Mission Valley area. So and she worked just up the road, up the freeway, and she works in mental health, but also basically in the medical industry. She was a nurse. She's a nurse by trade. And so she worked at a psych hospital. And I said, the only difference between my job and your job is I call them guests and you call them clients. But we feels like we deal often with the same type of people sometimes. So
all I know is if you have someone like that in your life, it helps the stressful situations too.
Yeah, I think she sent me a thing a couple weeks ago that says, if you need to burn some bridges, I've got matches and we ride at dawn.
I love
that is my girl.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, now we're going to get to the meat of this. People like to understand a little bit about your work history. So can you take us a little bit on the journey of your work history?
Yeah, so I started out, as I said, in San Diego, and because I grew up kind of inland in San Diego, it was kind of a small town, like I said, kind of adjacent to some rural areas. And so there were not a lot of opportunities when you were 16 years old to get a job in the city where I grew up. And so it was AMC, Santee Village 8. There was the grocery store, but you had to be 18. And then there was McDonald's. And so of those 3 options, one of the girls that was a teacher's assistant in one of the classes I was in worked at AMC. And she said, they're hiring. And if you want, I'll put in a good word for you. And so I went and I interviewed and I got hired the day before my 16th birthday. So it was a Saturday and my birthday was on a Sunday. And Monday I had to take my driver's test. And my parents were like, you can accept the job if you pass your driver's test. So I often think that the course of my life would have changed if I was a bad driver, which some would argue I am. But thankfully I was very studious. I had studied for my exam and I passed my driver's exam. So I got to work at Santee Village 8. I got hired, like I said, the summer before my senior year in high school. And so what's kind of notable about that is that most people are not 16 years old their senior year of high school. Because we moved, like I said, from LA to San Diego, somewhere in there I skipped a grade. And so because I was literally always shorter, smaller, younger than everybody else, sometimes by a good 2 years, I think that instilled in me kind of a people pleaser mentality. I was always very eager to try and fit in, which I think is kind of fundamental to who I am today. I'm always very conscious of people who are uncomfortable or feel left out. And so I'm kind of grateful for that experience because I think that kind of plays into my leadership style. I think kindness is a very underrated virtue. And so sometimes, as we were discussing, it's mistaken for weakness, and it is not. Being kind is a choice. And I think that's really important. So, that first job, like I said, when I was in high school, I was a concessionist, I was an usher, I was a box office cashier. As you saw from my great 80s hair, that was me sitting in the box office at Santee Village 8. And, I think what I learned, and I'd like to share as I go along, kind of not just what I did, but what I learned from it. And so as a concessionist, a lot of times, the dreaded bathroom check, they're like, somebody needs to check the restroom, which means you went in and you wiped down the counters and you swept up. And so I, because I like to move around and, if you're a concessionist, you're kind of tied to your register, you really can't go away. And so when they would say, who wants to do a bathroom check? I'm like, I do. And so I would go in and wipe down the counters. And my one trick is that I can still open from the outside a locked restroom stall using the broom handle because I mastered the art of that. I was happy to flush toilets.
No crawling on your belly under there, huh? Okay.
No, I had figured it out. I can still do it to this day. Very proud of that, my party trick. that no one appreciates. But I think what I learned from that is, like kind of volunteer to do the stuff that nobody else wants to do, and not just do it, but do it well. And that's, that kind of is something that I've taken into each part of my life. It's like, when I was a general manager, if somebody barfed in the middle of the lobby, I'm like, okay, give me the thing, give me the vomit stuff. I'll sprinkle it on and clean it up. But I won't ever ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And so that kind of mentality was sort of instilled, that you can do things that are not super glamorous or sexy, but if you do them well, that people appreciate that. So that's kind of the first chapter of my AMC career. And then, as with all of us, like the personal and the work life kind of intermix. And so, like I said, I started when I was 16 and graduated from high school. And at the end of that year, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so she was very ill for the next 2 years, and she passed away when I was 19. And at that point, my AMC coworkers, every single one of them came to my mom's memorial. And so that's another lesson to take from it, which is that I think in our best incarnation at AMC, or really in any job where there's a team of people that work together, we're a family. We look out for each other. And if you do it right, it can really be this kind of support system and, kind of this ability to, find yourself amongst people who, not only work hard and work well together and are high achieving, but also really care about each other. And so that was really important to me. And I think that's part of why I continued to stay with AMC. From that point, I, did a brief stint. I was the ultimate 80s cliche. Did a brief stint in retail. So I worked at the Limited and at the Gap. And I think from that, I learned that it's really important to find the right job, because when you're in the wrong job, it's not fun. And so I've always kind of stuck with that mentality of like, when it stops being fun, then it's time to do something else. And I think sometimes we stick in places that aren't the right fit for us because we're scared or we just don't know what else to do. But it's really important. And I learned that early on, which I really appreciated about that. From there, I, again, still worked for AMC the entire time, even when I was at the Gap and the Limited, and then I was going to school to be a school teacher. And, I worked as a teacher's assistant and did some other things, but always worked for AMC the entire time. I was so flexible, and it was such an easy job, just to go to, because it was predictable and you understood. And like I said, the people there felt like a family to me. And so I, what I learned, I did my student teaching, and then I actually taught junior high for a year. And that was right when the megaplexes started to open up. And so I was doing some training for the theater at Mission Valley when it opened up. And my general manager had said, look, I know you're ready to go be an adult and go do your grown-up job, but would you just work on the weekends for us and just come in on Saturdays and help us train? Because we hired 450 people, when back then your average staff size was like 25 people. But, as the megaplexes were so crazy busy, it was interesting to, kind of see how that evolved our business forward. And so what I learned is that I loved being a school teacher. I did it, like I said, I taught for a year. And it was interesting because I worked with, I was obviously in my early 20s. It was my first teaching job. I'm in junior high. I'm still short. And so like the principal would come in and she'd be like, where's the teacher? And I'm like, I'm right here. And, but what was fun about it was that, as I think about it, like I didn't like the structure of doing the same thing every single day. And so what I learned about myself is that I'm more of a generalist. And so even though I loved teaching, at the end of that year, I ended up getting pink slips just because our enrollment went down. So I likely would have been hired again in the fall. But I thought, I'm just going to take 1 year off and get this AMC thing out of my blood. Like, being a school teacher is like really hard and really stressful. Like, you're a teacher, you're a therapist, you're a nutritionist, you're, a parent, you're doing all of these kind of things. And so when I would go to AMC, like if there was a kid that was misbehaving, like at school, I'd have to put him on an IEP. I'd have to meet with the parents. We'd have to meet with the counselors, and I'd be like, I'm writing you up. And if you don't behave, I'm going to let you go. And so there was a certain appeal to that at that point in my life. And I was like, I think I just want to do something that's a little bit more fun. And so I never really looked back. I never went back to teaching. I had my credential. I thought, well, I've got 10 years to be a school teacher, but I'm going to try this AMC thing. So I was a hourly manager, salaried manager, senior manager, general manager, and did all of those different roles. And then in 2002, I always said I would never move to Kansas City. And like, it seems like the worst place on earth. And like the few times I'd visited, it just seemed like not a very exciting city. And then in 2002, they posted a job for the director of field training. And so I'd kind of gone rogue when we were opening the megaplexes. Like we had AMC training programs and they were terrible. It was like, sit around a table and ask people like, how much is a small popcorn? And I was like, this is not how we want to teach people. We want to teach people to have pride. We want them to be excited about this megaplex. Like this is like the first megaplex in San Diego. It was only the second one AMC had ever built. And so I rewrote our training materials and like, we're doing the wave and we're talking about what tourist screens are. And, you know, we're having fun. And so I, you know, like I said, I was planning to be a school teacher. So I'm like, well, you know, what are they going to do? Fire me for rewriting the training materials? And so as it turned out, my training materials that I went rogue and rewrote, we ended up using them for like all of the theater openings that we had in the mid to late 90s for all those megaplexes, because it worked really well and it helped kind of create a more engaged staff and associates for us. So in 2002, this job got posted, director of field training, which was basically to be in charge of training for everybody that worked for AMC in the field. And I was like, well, this is like my dream job. So I put my name in the hat. I knew I was really a long shot. I hadn't moved a lot for the company. I had never moved for the company. You know, I was still working in the same city where I was hired. And so I, you know, basically threw my name in the hat and they picked me. And so I moved to Kansas City in 2002. And, you know, I still have that education bent that you mentioned, which is that you often want to, when people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, I often think, is it because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing or they don't care to do it the right way? So one of those is a training issue. The other one is a performance issue. And so the training piece of it was something that, you know, really helped me. I felt like if you equip people with the tools and the knowledge they need to do their job, they can be successful. And that was something I felt really passionately about. So from there, I spent 3 years as the director of training. I know I'm talking a little bit long, but I promise I'm getting to the end. And then the next big phase was to be a director of operations. And that was in 2005 after we'd acquired Lowe's. So like I said, in training, you're addressing people who aren't doing their job because they don't know. As a director of operations, you're addressing people who are not doing their job right because they don't care. So that, you know, took it from being theory to being like really a practical thing. But it was interesting because, you know, I was from the West Coast. I'd moved to Kansas City. And then my first region that I oversaw as a director of operations, which was overseeing actual, you know, 30 GMs. They were in Long Island, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore. And then because I think my boss knew I'd jump off a building, he gave me like a couple of theaters in Naples. So, or in Sarasota rather. So that was great. I don't know what was more terrifying to them, that I was female, that I was from AMC because this was a Lowe's deal, or, you know, that I was from California. And so, but you have to learn to build a bridge with people who are unlike yourself. And that's a little uncomfortable. And so I learned through that job that, you know, how to kind of build a rapport with people and, you know, recognizing that GMs are people too. And I was traveling with someone that was like kind of a vice president of operations. And I was like, well, you know, come along and come for some of my visits. And we did a couple of visits together. And I said, so what feedback do you have for me? And he's like, well, maybe you could start by asking him like, how you doing? And I was like, oh, you mean before I jump into all the result stuff? Like, sure, yeah, I can do that. So I thought that was an important lesson to learn. And then, so I did that for 3 years. And then a position opened up as the vice president of our, what we called quality assurance back then, which was really our guest group. And then also our best practices group. And so I had no idea what any of that meant, but I was like, yeah, I'm game. Let's try it. How hard can it be? I dealt with customers in theaters. Surely this will be exactly the same. And spoiler alert, it wasn't.
So I have to ask you a question as we go through this.
Yeah.
Every time that you left a position and move on to another, did you leave a big gaping hole where you were?
No, I don't think so, because I, you know, one, there's a lot of talented people within AMC. So I think there were opportunities for people to move up. But one of the things that I stolen this from Casey Caramello from Coca-Cola, but the whole idea that like lift as you climb, like kind of train your replacement, you know, help other people kind of move up in the organization with you. And so I would like to think that I've been able to do that and help other people advance their career.
Do you mentor too?
I haven't ever leaned into kind of like formal mentoring. It's usually been more organic when there's people that I connect with and that, will reach out or I will reach out to them. And so I think it's always important for all of us to have people that we can reach out to that will help us, like as you're trying to think about a decision, do I go this way or do I go this way in my career? You want to have somebody you can bounce that off of that you trust. And so I've had
I'm
people
so hitting you up for a mentorship program, just so you know. But hey, keep going.
Okay. No. So yeah, I mean, I again, I guess you'd have to ask some of the people on this call, but I think in my own way, I've tried to, I've certainly tried to lean in and help support others however I can, whenever I can. So that was our operations group, operations excellence group. And so again, kind of when I think back about that time, like basically, if somebody, our CEO at the time was Peter Brown. So like if somebody called the front desk and was like, I want to speak to Peter Brown, and they were like super angry, they would forward that call. And so I remember one call where this guy was kind of losing his mind on me. And, it's funny. The funny thing about customer service, and like anybody who's worked in theater understands that, is that when people come up to express their unhappiness with something that has happened to them, ironically, the
I just
only
gotta
thing
finish this side and then I'm
Thank
here.
you.
Find out who's
Thank you.
ironically, the only thing that they really want from you is for what had happened to them to not have happened, which is the only thing you can actually give them. And so there were a few phone calls where,
And the estimated time, I was told it would take about 2 hours this morning, but I'm already
I think it's
almost
Julie
2
that
hours.
needs to be muted.
Right now, this takes about.
There we go. Thank you. And so anyway, it makes, I took a couple phone calls where, like I tried to reason with people and tried to make things work for them. And then at the end, I thanked them for their time and invited them to experience their next movie at a Regal or Cinemark. So what I learned from that is that I was not the best person at that job. And so I think you should always what I learned from that is surround yourself with great people. I had a woman that worked in our team, Linda Garland. She'd been with AMC for like 20 years and she'd been in like the guest services group that entire time. And literally she could take these phone calls from people who she could take phone calls from people who were so angry. And then like at the end of it, like they loved her and they would send her Christmas cards. And it was like, you're not going to be good
at go to hell and then tell you to enjoy the trip.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think we've all, I think those of us that have had success have figured out that like, we're not going to be the best at every single thing that we're required to do. So surround yourself with great people who are good at doing the things you're not good at, and then let them do it, like trust them. So I think that was one of the key things I took away from that role. Then I had a chance to move over to be the VP of food and beverage. And that was kind of great because at the time they were kind of restructuring the department. And so they brought in as the SVP, a gentleman named George Patterson, who had come from the Yum Group. And he had, was new to AMC. And I, at that point, been working for people that had only worked for AMC for very long periods of time. And I think we all have blind spots that we develop over time just through familiarity. And so I raised my hand because I wanted to work with someone who hadn't worked for AMC for 20 plus years, which at that point I had. And then from there, it was kind of interesting because I had an opportunity to become the vice president of our dine-in brand. So we had 5 dine-in theaters that we had opened and we wanted to grow that brand. And over the 4-year period that I was in dine-in, I took it from 5 theaters to 58. Got to work with amazing people like Justin Johnson, who's like right in the middle of my screen. And it was a great experience. It was by far like one of the best things because it kind of took all those things I'd been learning: training, operations, guest engagement, and how you food and beverage, and then you combine all these things together to create something that is kind of new and interesting and like just different. Like there is no playbook. There's playbooks for restaurants. There's playbooks for theaters. There's no playbooks for dine-in theater restaurants. And so I actively resisted going into that role. Like my boss at the time was like, hey, I think you should move over and be in charge of this dine-in brand. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in charge of food and beverage. I love food and beverage. No, thank you. And he was like, then we met like a week later. He's like, yeah, you should really give some thought to this. And I was like, yeah, I thought about it. Don't want to do it. Thank you. Oh. And then like the next week we met, and he like slides this letter across the table and he's like, your new job is the VP of dine-in brand. And I was like, we've already talked about this. I don't want it. He's like, it's your new job. And I was like, so at the time, I don't know why. I think I was nervous about like not being in charge of something that I didn't understand. But it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, which again is a great lesson for all of us. And it was by far like the best 4 years of like the last 20 years in the AMC, working in Kansas City, just because I learned so much from that. I met so many great people. We got to do things that we hadn't done before. I made a lot of terrible decisions, which thankfully people smarter than me, like Justin, helped fix. I was like, we should do a tip pool, and they're like, yeah, that's a terrible idea. We're not going to do that. So it was a good opportunity to get out of your comfort zone. And then it's interesting. I talked about my mom kind of being the one book end of my story with AMC. And in 2018, I was actually at CinemaCon. And on that Tuesday morning, I got a phone call. I'd had like a routine, I'm like in a very high risk group because my mom was like 41 years old and, had died from breast cancer. And so I was always very diligent, and there was a spot, and that happened a couple of times over the years, and they biopsied it. And so you kind of get, the first time it happens, you freak out. But after that, you kind of just think, okay, well, it's just, something. And so Tuesday morning at like 6 a.m., because we're in the West Coast, and obviously I live in Kansas City, and they call me and they're like, your tumor was malignant. You have a malignant tumor, you have breast cancer. And so that was kind of a pivotal moment in my life. So that's kind of the other bookend where breast cancer has sort of impacted my life. And it was interesting timing because I was finishing my 4th year in that dine-in brand. We were up to 50 theaters. We were doing really well. And so that fall, I had an opportunity to become the SVP of food and beverage. And I really appreciated Adam Aaron sat down with me and he said, look, we have this opportunity for you, but I know you're in the middle of like battling breast cancer. And so, if this is not the right time, like, tell me that. And, the opportunity will still be there for you, but you get to choose it. And I was like, no, I think I'd like to move forward. But it was such an interesting thing to happen at that point, like in my career, like as a person and as a leader, because you kind of spend your whole life like waiting for this other shoe to drop when you're the daughter of a woman who has died from breast cancer. And so then the shoe dropped, which was like the scariest thing that I could possibly think of happening to me. But my story was very different than my mom's. It was detected very early. I had a mastectomy, and it was interesting because, again, I had worked nonstop, since I was 16 years old, and I was, 48 when I was diagnosed, or 47. And so for 3 months, it took a little longer for me to recover, or spiked an infection, blah, blah, blah. But you have 3 months to kind of sit and think about your life, which you don't normally get that kind of a gift, at that point in your life, because you're working so hard and you've got family and all this other stuff. And so I just, it really helped me stop being afraid. And so I think I'm a different person, a better person. And it sounds so weird to say that, getting breast cancer was kind of a gift in that sense, because it really, I got out of my own head finally, and I really stopped being afraid, and I really started being open to things. And so I think if that hadn't happened, then, last year when John McDonald, who I'd worked for 20 plus years, when he retired, a position was opened up. It wasn't his position, but it was one that was reporting to him to be the SVP of US operations, which is where I am today. So today I oversee a P&L responsibility for 570 theaters and anywhere from 12 to 15,000 associates that work in them. I also oversee food and beverage, which is a $1.5 billion business. I also oversee our guest group, which has been renamed our Operations Excellence Group. And then I have a staff ops group that helps to support all that. And I don't know that I would have been able to step up to the plate and, take on that challenge, which is such a big job and so outside of my comfort zone in terms of like, I'm a control freak. And so I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to be the best at this job. But I was telling you in kind of one of our pre-calls, my new motto is that post breast cancer is I don't have to be the best at anything. I just have to be the best at getting better at everything I try. So as long as I'm a better person, a better leader today than I was yesterday, then I'm doing my job. And so I think as women, like we get in our own heads sometimes and we doubt ourselves and, am I ready for this job? And I think if I hadn't gotten breast cancer when I did and had that time to reflect and kind of just stop being afraid, I don't know that I would have had the courage to kind of step up and take the role that I have today, which is the best job in the company. And I love it so much. And I get to do so many different things that I love. And I get to work with so many amazing people. So I know that was a very long version of me, but
The
That's
comment
my
that you
story.
said, it reminds me of what they say about, people. You don't have to be the fastest person. You just need to be faster than the slowest person. So there you
Yes.
Okay,
I
so I'm
love
going to rock through some of these next questions so that we give people
Yeah.
a few minutes to talk to you. So one thing I'd like to ask, there's always that pinnacle time in your life. And I believe
Mhm.
that this is when you were 18. What would you say to 18-year-old Jennifer?
Well, so other than breast cancer, which has been a very pivotal thing in my life, the other thing you should know about me is that I've always suffered from anxiety. Like I was always kind of an anxious kid, probably because I was younger than everybody else. And so that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, anxiety is really common. 1 in 3 people suffer from anxiety. It tends to skew more often in females than males. It is literally one of the most treatable mental health conditions. But only 1 in 4 people actually seek treatment for it, which is kind of heartbreaking. And so I funneled my anxiety into overachievement, which is not uncommon with women. And so that worked pretty well for like the first half of my career. But I got to a certain point in my life where I was like literally having panic attacks all of the time. And so when you're experiencing that, you start to look for triggers. Well, what triggered this panic attack? So then you start to do all these crazy things to try and avoid triggering a panic attack. And so, like an example would be like, I would get very anxious when I would travel, and I would leave my house and I would drive 3 blocks and I'd think, did I close the garage door? And then I would go back and I would check and the garage door would be closed. And then I would drive away again. I'd get 4 blocks away and I would say, did I close the garage door? And it's like so silly. I mean, it sounds insane when you say it out loud, but because it didn't happen overnight, it happened over the course of 20 years. I didn't realize like how small my world was getting, or all these weird things I was doing to try and avoid it. And so I hit a point in my life where so my advice to my 18-year-old self is like, take a chill pill. Like, anxiety is treatable, and I could have enjoyed my life a lot.
No. Okay.
Yes, it's literally called Xanax. And I mean, there's lots of ways that you can treat it. Exercise, doing what do you call it when you're like headspace, meditation, exercise, diet, but sometimes really good meds make it better. And we need to destigmatize the idea that anxiety and depression, which are so prevalent, that those are things you can't treat, or that there's any shame in being treated. If you wake up tomorrow morning and your foot turned blue, you'd haul yourself out to the doctor because you would say, something is wrong with me. But when your brain chemistry stops working the way it's supposed to, nobody really speaks about that. And so I like to say I've run on a platform of mental health. I've been very transparent with the AMC folks and talked about my struggles with anxiety. And so I just wish I had known younger, earlier in my life, that I could enjoy my life a lot more if I could get my brain chemistry to have worked the way it was supposed to. So I think a lot of us, especially women, tend to struggle with that. So.
And I can relate. I had been violently attacked in my 20s, and I didn't know that I was going to suffer trauma. And I remember coming to work one day and just putting my head on my desk and crying. And my boss came up to me and said, if you broke your leg, you'd go to the doctor. He said, you broke your heart. We need to get you to see a doctor.
Well, how great that you work for someone that was kind enough and empathetic enough to do that. And it's so great.
I understand that. Okay, so we're going to do a couple questions, then we're going to do the rapid fire one. So one more question I think is kind of critical is, what is one thing that people say in the industry that you don't agree with, or you just have some challenges with?
This is going to be an unpopular opinion.
Just be brief. Well, yeah, because I'm going to run to the other ones.
All right. National Cinema Day. I want to say this correctly. I think that the spirit of National Cinema Day, when it was conceived, post-pandemic in 2021, was to try and get people excited. And the spirit of that day was around getting people excited about movie going and getting people to remember like how visceral it is and how great it is to sit in a darkened environment and escape from your problems for a couple hours. And I think we need to challenge ourselves as we head into 2024 to think about how do we capture that spirit and that excitement, but do it in a way that ensures a positive experience, not just for our associates, but also for our guests. And I just, Taylor Swift is like so top of mind for all of us. Like that was by far the most positive thing that has happened to my associates, I think, in like the last 10 years. Like those folks, Swifties, were so nice, and we're exchanging friendship bracelets, and people were really leaning into this connection and being excited. And I think to some extent, like Barbenheimer, like that was something that was organic, but people were excited, they dressed up, like that's what we're trying to capture. And so I just wonder if there is a way that we can continue to evolve our thinking and get smarter about how to capture that excitement, the best part of movie going, in a way that really reminds people how great it is to sit, again, in a darkened theater and yet be connected to people, but not, which is kind of the
I'm gonna challenge everybody on this call. If you agree, I want you to put, Lisa, just put agree, because I think we have a pretty strong group of people right here. I think collectively the rising tide rises all ship. Look at agree.
Thank you,
Okay.
Imogen.
Oh my gosh. Rapid fire questions. Because I know we got a short I have a hard stop too. So let's go into these questions real quick. Favorite movie genre?
Musicals. Love Singing in the Rain. Absolute favorite movie.
Okay. Favorite movie snack?
Popcorn.
Okay.
After 36 years, I still love popcorn.
AMC popcorn too. Favorite cartoon character?
So I think in the picture that what you put on there, I have Flounder from Little Mermaid, and he was like one of my favorite characters. And so I wore him on my vest for many years.
Love it. Okay. Any shows do you binge watch?
So Daisy Jones and the Six, which is based on a book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is a great book. It's kind of like a Fleetwood Mac-esque, documentary sort of thing, fictionalized. But the music is fantastic. And then I just recently adopted a kitty cat, and I named her Daisy after Daisy Jones. So I highly recommend.
Okay. Beverage of choice?
Coca-Cola. Every time.
Any animals? Do you own an animal?
I have my Daisy kitty. I love her so.
Favorite city?
San Diego. Really anywhere with a beach though. I mean, I love San Diego because it has a beach and it will always feel like home to me. But I love Kansas City too. I've really learned to appreciate Kansas City, but anywhere with a beach. Don't ask me to go on vacation to go skiing. That is not a vacation. It has to have warm weather and a beach.
Okay. So when it's time to wake up, do you hit the snooze button?
Yes. I'm still a theater manager at heart. My brain doesn't wake up until 10 a.m. and I get my second wind at 9:30 at night. So I don't know how to get that out of my blood.
Best way to communicate with you: call, text, or email?
Text.
Okay. Superpower you wish you had at work?
I wish I could clone myself so that one version of myself could do all the boring stuff that's like required, and then I could do all the fun stuff.
Favorite vacation spot? Probably San Diego.
Anywhere with a beach, but Hawaii. I liked Hawaii. It took me till my 40th birthday to get to Hawaii, and I was like, I will not wait 40 years to come back here again. Hawaii is amazing. Great beaches. Anybody
ever pulled a prank on you?
Yes. I seem to be the target for those sort of things. Yeah. Trying to think of a good one. I mostly, like, my boss is Dan Ellis, who's our COO, and he's amazing. Yeah. He's a lawyer by trade. He's very buttoned up, and he seems like this very serious individual. And so he came into my office last week, and he threw a handful of styrofoam peanuts at me that had come in some package or whatever. And so then I and my group of spies have strategically planted styrofoam peanuts like everywhere that he could possibly go. They're taped to his desk. They're in his drawers. They're at work. They're all over the place. So, we do silly things like that.
Okay. If you could swap jobs with anyone at work, who would it be?
That's a great question. I mean, it's not a specific person, but like, I always think the CEO role is very interesting because, just to be a fly on the wall, like we've, in 100 years at AMC, 103 years, we've had 4 CEOs. And so they're a different beast. Like, I don't think I could ever be a CEO because I require more than 4 hours of sleep at night, but it's just like, they function on a different level. And so I'm always kind of fascinated by people who are so much different. And it's interesting. I've spent, film and food are what drive our business. And I've spent so much time on the food side. I've spent 0 time on the film side. So Elizabeth Frank would be a fun person to mirror for a job mirror for a day. All
righty. Let's see. We're running on down here. If you could invite a historical figure to work, who would you invite?
Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I love me some RBG. She's amazing. Okay. It's kind of a strange one, but Princess Di. Like, I grew up in the 80s, and so like that whole story from the fairy tale to not being a fairy tale. Like, I always thought, kind of like Britney. Like, there's some sadness that's kind of
Right.
embedded in that story. So I'd be interested in her. And then Katharine Hepburn, I just always thought she was a badass. Like she just seems so ahead of her time. So
I love it. Okay. Do you speak any languages other than English?
un poco español.
Un poquito solamente. Guilty pleasure.
Sunshine. My dermatologist hates me, but I'm a sunshine girl. Like in the summertime, I'm outside and they're like, put on sunscreen. I'm like, yeah. I put
Okay.
on baby oil when I was 16. It hasn't the damage already been done?
Just do on
a
the
different
roof.
generation.
Okay. Who's the person you call when something bad happens?
Oh, my dad.
All
Very
right.
close to him.
Do you sing karaoke?
Badly.
You have
I
a
can't
go-to
carry a
song?
tune in a bucket. It usually has to be a group song, like Summer Nights from Greece or something like that, where I can just be loud and horrible with everybody else.
Okay, 2 more questions. When you're angry, you fill in the blank.
Curse, usually a 4-letter word, starts with F.
Okay, who plays Jennifer in a movie about you?
I think Jennifer Garner, just because I have affinity for all the Jennifers that were born between like 1970 and 1974. There's like literally millions of us.
Yeah.
So I like that we share a name, and she just seems like a genuinely nice person.
Yeah, I was going to go Aniston, but whatever. Okay, so we're down to the last. So I know a lot of people want to talk to you, but I'm going to call in Julie Mavra George because Julie had a couple questions and she works with the Fresno School District. Julie, do you have an opportunity to step up and say hi? There you are, sweetheart. Unmute.
Hi,
There you
hi
go.
Jennifer. Thank you.
Really?
So I posted in chat, like we do a lot of mentorships and internships and job shadows with our kids, and we have 8 comprehensive high schools that all have video production in it, and we're working towards creating certifications in production assistant, things like that. So how can I more connect kids with people like yourself to offer those opportunities with all of our students?
Well, I think, we obviously have a great footprint in a lot of different communities. I think a lot of our general managers are always very open to, like if there's, different one, if they're interested in working for AMC or if they're just interested in kind of understanding or getting a behind the scenes tour, I think that's something you can reach out to local general managers just to say, hey, if our group wanted to come out and kind of talk about, the technology or that sort of thing. I also think, reaching out to AMC has a great human resources department. I'll be honest, post pandemic, we are a leaner, meaner organization than we were pre-pandemic. And so we did have formal internships and things like that we did. Not all of that has come back post-pandemic. So I think we try and do what we can and, try and support where we can. But, the hardest thing we do every day is figuring out what we're going to say no to. And there's a lot of things we'd like to do that right now we just, as we're still a recovering industry, we sometimes struggle a little bit with. So I know that's not a great answer, but that's the real answer.
And I apologize. I meant virtually. We do all of our internships virtually, like job shadows or working within the students in their class. So my apologies for not being clear on that. So like, is that something that, like I'm thinking of people that are in specific roles, not touring or that type of thing, but like an actual person that's working in video production or working in graphic design or something like that.
Yeah, I still think probably for most large organizations or exhibition companies, probably starting with the HR department and kind of sharing what are your needs, what are you looking for, and then seeing if they have the bandwidth to support that and if there's a match there.
Oh, perfect. All right, Misha, you usually have a good question. You want to step up and say hi?
Sure, thank you very much. Just really curious, in your current role, is there any trends that you are seeing for the movie theater business as far as the theaters themselves? Something with all the cutting edge technology, with the digital and everything?
Yeah, I would say that technology is actually something I'm really excited about. Like there's so many different ways where I think technology and exhibition that makes me excited. Certainly like on the beverage side, Coca-Cola Freestyle, I think that's a fantastic innovation, gives so much more choice to the consumer. On the food side, again, equipment. It's amazing how far food equipment and like just the process of like getting, frozen food to theaters that actually like taste good. Like there's so many more options. So like, I know that sounds really geeky, but I get excited about like what kind of offerings, because I'm like a food person and I love to eat, what kind of things we can do there. Our sponsor, Velocity, I know that we're getting ready to do a pilot with them and also with Heather, helping to support that for some new digital technology in our theaters. And then I would say probably the last thing, just really quick, is that, as a head of operations, like the labor crisis is real. And so I'm always thinking about like automation and where are the places where we have employees doing really transactional type of interactions that really don't create value, and how do we replace that in a way that can be done more seamlessly, so that we can then save those associate interactions for things that really make people excited about coming to the movies or really love AMC. And so trading friendship bracelets and, step and repeats. And I don't know, just, things that we saw over the summer, like with Barbenheimer. And, those were that's where you want to spend your time, not, here's your ticket and here's your 12 cents back. So quick round robin.
Okay, so we got couple more minutes. So Mary always has great questions. Well, Mary, I'm gonna let you round it out. And I wish we had, another hour, but unfortunately I could jaunt to the airport or I just keep chatting. So Mary, why don't you take it home for us?
Hi, thank you for sharing your story, Jennifer. A lot of it really resonated with me. My question for you is, whether it was an idea, a project, or a role, was there a time ever that you felt stuck, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, good question.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I I'm sure there's probably a lot of times where I felt stuck. But probably some of it was self-imposed, like I think as women, we talk a lot in different settings like this about imposter syndrome. And, I think there were a lot of times where I lacked the confidence in myself, or I was too anxious and in my own head about things. And so I think the places where I felt stuck, like I remember having a conversation a couple of years ago with John McDonald, and he kept asking me like, well, what do you want to do next? And I was like, I want to contribute to the organization. I want to continue to have an impact. I want to do that. And he's like, yeah, but what job do you want? And I was like, I don't know. And like, I learned in those interactions that you can't cry if you're looking upwards, which is a great tip for women, because I would cry when I would get really frustrated. And he kept pressing me for this answer. And I was like, I don't know what the answer was. And I was stuck in the sense of I couldn't articulate what I wanted next for my career. Like I should have said, I want to be the SVP of US operations, but for some reason, I just couldn't, I wasn't in a headspace where I could define exactly what role. I could tell you what I wanted that job to feel like, but I couldn't tell you what it looked like or what specific area in the company it was. So I don't know if that helps or not. But.
No, that does. That honestly hits the nail right on the head.
I love it.
That whole, like, you can't cry and look up at the same time thing. That's a good tip. I've used that one.
Great. Thank you.
So Jennifer, this concludes our speaker series, and I gotta tell you, I'm infatuated with your story, and I love that you were willing to just be so open and candid with us. So everybody, thanks for sharing this awesome hour with us, and thank you for being the best part of we. Happy.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Thank you, AMCers, for joining us.
I know you guys get it. Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Y'all can unmute and say bye as you say goodbye if you want. Yes, I love it.
Jennifer's the best.
I paid him to say that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Bye, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, here it goes.